So now we have Danielle Belgrave. She's a co-organizer, so you've already seen her. She's a researcher at Microsoft Research Cambridge in the Healthcare Machine Learning Group. She also holds a tenured research fellowship at Imperial College in London. Her research focuses on developing probabilistic and causal graphical modeling frameworks to understand disease progression over time. She has a BS in Business Mathematics and Statistics from LSE and an MSc in Statistics from University College of London, and a PhD in Statistics and Machine Learning Applied to Health from the University of Manchester. So welcome, Danielle.
Okay, thank you, Pablo, for that introduction. And thank you to the other organizers for inviting me and having me on this panel. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic. It's a topic that I would admit, working in machine learning for healthcare, I've only thought about this very, very recently. That actually working in this aspect, which I've worked in for the past 10 years, it is a way of doing social good. And this is something I've been reflecting on since February, and I'll tell you why a bit later. So AI for social good is all about how we can use the tools that we have, which is machine learning and artificial intelligence, to do good to society and to do good to each other, so those that we love and those that are around us as well. So the reason I started reflecting on this in February, or maybe November last year, was I was invited to a school's dark stool. So school's dark stool are usually computer science, sort of like meetups in Germany, in this place called Darkstool. In the middle of nowhere, they give you good food for a week, and the idea is that you immerse yourself in a problem. And Tom Schull, who's from DeepMind, and his wife, Professor Claudia Cleopath in Imperial College, wrote this letter and said, would you be interested in participating for this? And the first question I had to myself is, what do I have to do with social good? And it was actually really impressive being at this meeting and meeting other people in machine learning who were theorists. So this is M.T. Khan, who is also one of the organizers of School Darkstool. He's a professor in Japan. And there were people from all 5 continents. In this picture, there are a lot of people from different NGOs in Africa and NGOs in Europe as well, looking at doing social good, but not having access to AI or machine learning. And we had some very theoretical people who were looking at how we can help them to solve challenges. And I think this was a really formative exercise for both sides, to have people who were really ingrained in problems and didn't have access to technology and thought, how can we use technology to, what can machine learning do for us? Because there's all this hype about AI and machine learning, and how can we use that to solve our everyday problems? And this was just totally mind-blowing to be in that sort of room. I'm just going to highlight one person who I was quite, I thought quite interesting as well, who's another theorist called Yi, who I can't find on this picture right now. But Yi is someone who's quite theoretical, but I was really impressed by how curious he was of the sort of problems people were looking at, and how we can really work together on the intersection of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and social good to really find solutions to problems. So this for me was a really fantastic week. And the sort of motivation that the people who organized this were MT, Tom Schull, Claudia Cleopath, who's not on this picture, and Ruben Wine. So Ruben is in Oxfam. He worked in Uganda for many years, and I think now he was based in Oxfam in Amsterdam, if I'm not mistaken. And the motivation for doing this was that there have been a series of successes in artificial intelligence applied to many different problems. So we have the long-standing challenge like Go, and many other challenges as well. And at the same time, the pace of research in the applied domain, so in healthcare in particular, I think, and in many of these other applications is very slow. It's very hard to have impact of machine learning in the real world. And it's because reality is very messy. The sort of data we collect is very messy. And this was really interesting in trying to see whether we could come up with quick solutions. So from this school dark stool, there were a lot of collaborations formed as well between machine learning researchers and people actually working on the ground with NGO. And actually, the biggest thing we came up with, doing an advocate for good data, was helping NGOs to think of ways of collecting data so that they could get insights from that data and also can have some real-world impacts from that as well. So the goal of School's Dark Stool was to ensure that social good doesn't become an afterthought in machine learning, but that technology is applied in contexts where the need is most urgent and its potential impact is the highest. So this was also a really interesting exercise. So there were about 7 NGOs, or 9 NGOs actually. And so the idea was that we would, so one of the challenges was actually scoping problems. So what is the problem we should focus our energy on? Because there we could have the most impact and do it quickly within a sort of week-long hackathon. So this was a really interesting experience, and I was really grateful to the organizers of this school to do something a bit unconventional in the school's dark stall and to really think out of the box of AI for social good, not just thinking of the more theoretical domains of School's Dark Stool, which is traditionally what School's Dark Stool is about, but thinking also about social impact and how we can have global impact as well. So during School's Dark Stool, we did a lot of hacking, but also we did a lot of thinking. And out of this, we came up with a declaration, which is the Dark Stool Declaration, on the application of machine learning and artificial intelligence for social good. So I'll just go through that at a high level, and the reference is on the next slide. And I put this picture up because one of the things that came up in the discussion and between the machine learning researchers thinking of this problem and the NGOs thinking of this problem is that solutions should be anchored very much in the Sustainable Development Goals. So the Sustainable Development Goals are no poverty, having food and water, having access to healthcare, education, gender equality. So there are these 17 principles of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we try to anchor the principles very much in that. So this is a summary of the recommended principles in pursuing applications of AI and machine learning for social good. This is a reference up here. So we wrote this document during that week, and many people signed this document as well. And it's really amazing that a lot of the NGO community and also a lot of the machine learning community as well signed up to this. And really with this, really as a sort of show that this is a worthwhile task, and this is a really important task, that machine learning shouldn't be superimposed on the problems to find solutions, but that we need to work a lot more organically and work together. I don't know if the text is very clear, but I'll read out. So the first principle, these are the 5 principles we came up with. The first principle was operating within a just and ethical framework that respects human rights, standards, and law. And this is really important, that when we look for solutions in AI and machine learning for social good, it has to be within a particular ethical framework, respecting the laws of the countries, and respecting also the culture in countries as well. So this is a challenge where you want to have technology that is generalizable across different settings, but at the same time, it does have to be tailored towards particular cultural contexts, and this is something we need to think deeply about. And we think deeply about it by working with the domain experts, so those who work in this field. The second principle is striving for AI projects to be built on accessible technology. And again, this is really important. It was quite amazing speaking to a lot of the NGOs based in the continent of Africa, where, so there was one particular example of a man who founded an NGO called Barefoot Law. And this particular NGO was giving legal advice to people who didn't have access to legal advice. And there are certain things you take for granted, that the easiest way for people to access any information is through their mobile phone. So he was talking about a lot of legal cases where maybe women were victims of domestic abuse, and it would be infeasible for them to go anywhere without their husband. So this was a case that was very, very ingrained in that particular country, especially in places that were further out from Kampala, which is the capital of Uganda. And so he was talking about how we can have more accessible technology and also get technology faster to people, because this particular app that they have is in very high demand, but there's no automation. So how can we think of solutions to automate some processes as well? The third principle is striving for AI projects to be deployable across various settings and communities. So it's true we want solutions that are tailored to a particular cultural context, but also we want to be able to generalize across many contexts as well. And I think this is where it was interesting in the School Starts tool as well, to have that dialogue across different NGOs, to think, okay, how can we use solutions to our problems and apply them to different domains as well. The fourth was around encouraging the collection of high-quality data. And this is really important. If we want to use data to have insights, design is really important. And this was something that came up. So a lot of the NGOs came with their own data from the different settings that they had. But one of the problems was very often you do some data cleaning and you end up with 5 useful cases, even though they had millions of data points. So we saw the importance of NGOs engaging with the AI community early on to help with this, to help with the design of studies and effective collection of data, and this was really important. And finally, the fifth principle is around fostering deep collaborations and partnerships between the AI and NGO community. And I think this underlines everything that I've said before, that it's really important to have this dialogue, because sometimes when we come up with solutions from a machine learning perspective, we can be very naive in, and I say that, firstly accusing myself, that sometimes we're so anxious to use the tools we have to come up with great solutions that we forget the problem underlying. So I'm going to talk about a particular project that I've been working on for the past 12 months, and that was announced last month. And I think in this, I tried to follow these principles of really talking to partners and really talking to domain experts really deeply. And this was a particular topic that I'm really passionate about, and it's a topic of mental health. So last month was World Mental Health Day on the 10th of October. And mental health is a huge problem. And I think I've always been impacted by the statistics that every 40 seconds, somebody loses their life to suicide. So one of the things that I was really keen on was thinking, how can we use artificial intelligence and machine learning? Can we do anything to solve this problem? So right now at Microsoft Research, I'm working on a project called Project Talia. And Project Talia is all about how can we find solutions to improve mental health. So it's around building trustworthy AI systems for improving mental health. And you probably know the statistics already, but I'm just going to show them. Someone told me once, you have to stop showing this slide. But I think every time I show this slide, I'm always very impacted. Like, I never get used to the statistics. So the statistics on mental health is that 1 in 4 of us at some point in our lives are affected by a mental health or neurological condition. Also, it's the largest cause of disability, not just in the UK, but worldwide. So 22% of disability. And thirdly, it's the hugest economic cost. So I put the statistics of England here. So this is 1 out of 3 countries in the UK. And it costs the UK 105 billion per year. So the collaboration I'm working on at the moment is with a group called Silver Cloud Health. And it's all about trying to, so Silver Cloud is the leading digital therapeutics platform for mental and behavioral health. And the main tool they use is something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And the idea behind this collaboration is how can we increase access to therapy quickly? So the main mission we've been working on so far is personalizing mental health. So there are 3 main domains. The first is trying to improve patient engagement, because the more people engage with therapy, usually the better the outcomes. The second is how to improve patient outcomes, so how to tailor interventions to optimize clinical outcomes, and also how can we help supporters, so therapists, to using NLP techniques. So the main things we're doing in Project Talia is working on stratification, trying to understand different types of mental health conditions within umbrella terms. And this is really important because depression is it's not binary. It's probably around a quantile where you have 4 different categories. You can have no depression, mild, moderate, severe. But sometimes this isn't, people have different journeys and also different ways of evaluating mental health. So this is one of the things we've been looking on at the moment. The next is predicting, so trying to understand what interventions are most effective for different subgroups of people, and improving outcomes. So looking at ways to improve and personalize outcomes. So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip through the next 2 slides, but I'm happy to take questions. So the first thing we've been looking at is patient engagement. So trying to understand whether there are different types of engagers. And basically what we see, these were developed using probabilistic graphical models. So this is something I was talking about during the machine learning for healthcare talk. And what we see is that engaging more with the therapy doesn't necessarily mean that someone gets better, but it's how people engage with therapy. We've also looked at using natural language processing to understand how therapists, the effectiveness of therapists using sentiment analysis based on sentiments during coaching sessions. And this just at a high level again shows that when therapists use more positive words and shorter messages, it's more effective. So these sorts of insights can help with engaging the human in the loop in mental health interventions. And these sorts of collaborations, it's all about making AI work in healthcare. So these collaborations need to be very much embedded in the domain. And this is what needs to be the key differentiator in AI for social good, that we need to have a human-centered approach to doing AI and machine learning, and it's all about designing trustworthy systems. So I just want to thank the people who've collaborated with me on this project, and yeah, thank you for your attention.
Okay, we have time for 2 questions.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you for your talk. Very interesting. I'm quite curious about what are your thoughts about the patient journey during the diagnosis process? Because it's very common within the era of personalized medicine to just drop a lot of outcomes to the patients, and perhaps the patient cannot deal with that information. So do you have any work in progress or something?
So I think, thank you very much for this question, and I think this is a very interesting question, and it's one of the reasons I became interested in working in mental health is precisely the difficulty of the measure. And I think building good measurements is a big machine learning challenge as well. How do you, so in in normal healthcare, in all healthcare applications, usually what you do to make a diagnosis is you take a measurement of something, but measurements are always noisy. And my thought has always been that if we can solve the measurements problem, how do you understand the measurements? How do you understand the patient journey? If we can solve that in mental health, where there's a lot more heterogeneity, and also there's a lot more noise in the model, in the measure, then we can solve other machine learning for healthcare problems as well. So yes, thanks.
So the last question? No questions? Okay. There's one there.
Thank you, Danielle, for the talk. I also think this subject is very, very important, and there's also posters in the session that talk about and this subject of mental health. So my question is, what about applications in apps, and what do you think in self-diagnostic or self-diagnostic through apps that use this?
So this is a very good question as well, and something that I didn't bring out in my talk. So when we think about interdisciplinary research in especially applications like mental health, but I think in healthcare in general as well, and applications in social good. So one of the things I've really enjoyed recently that I've not done before is working with people who do user studies, so social scientists, people working in human-computer interaction. I think this work is really important, as well as having people who are experts in a particular clinical or NGO domain. It's also interesting having people at the bridge between the application and the user as well. And this gives a lot of insights in how to develop technologies that are usable. And one of the things we try to do is have usable technology. So it's all about understanding the users, understanding the clinicians or whoever's at the other end, and trying to bridge that gap seeing where machine learning can help and if it's a machine learning problem or not. So sometimes simple things are more useful. But this is really, I think, user studies and really understanding design from the user perspective is really important.
Okay, thank you very much, Danielle.